We got 12 games on Monday's MLB slate, one of which is a doubleheader, but which of these games can we be cashing in on? That's what you're here to find out. Player props, team totals, and more coming your way on First Pitch WagerTalk TV. Dan Alexander back in the driver's seat and joined by the Monday guests that keep on giving. That's right, Drew Martin at Drew Martin Bets, and BP waving salutoriously down there in the corner for you. At Bryan Power Wins is where you can find him on social. Boys, excited to get into it. We got a nice slate here on a Monday. Typically, you never know what you're going to get, but 12 great games. And Drew, I want to kick it off with you here. Looking at Pittsburgh and Houston, specifically, we got a player prop right out of the gate and a pitcher prop for the folks in this one. Just about a week ago, Skeens, the Phenom, he finally got a loss. You know, it was going to come at some point. When was it going to come? We get the first decision loss of the year, but still, Drew, even with the L next to the guy's name, 8 1/3 innings he pitches, 2 runs, 4 hits. Still got to be happy with that outing. It's just the bats didn't back him up. I think one of the most telling numbers is even in a loss, he ends up getting 8 Ks in that game, still going deep, still striking guys out. So even coming off of a loss for you, Drew, is there any reason we shouldn't expect Skeens to stay strong here in Houston? What say you?
I mean, I think he'll be strong in terms of his strikeout numbers, Dan. I thought you brought up a good point. You know, they have definitely been there. You also, your point about, you know, the length that he's going in these games. We got to remember that the Pittsburgh Pirates are a game over 500, Dan. You know, they're in the mix for an NL playoff spot, and I think that matters. You know, they rushed him to the show out of the minor leagues, and with good reason. You know, the number 1 pick overall out of LSU, go Tigers. And I'm actually pinpointing his 7 and a hook as a strikeout prop again here. Dan, it's 7.5. It's plus 125 to the over. That was at DraftKings shortly before we went live here on First Pitch. And a couple reasons why. One, the Houston Astros team OPS is lower against power pitchers that throw 95 plus miles per hour. They've struggled a little bit more against. Sure enough, Paul Skeens, you know, in terms of velocity, one of, if not the highest, he's hitting triple digits almost every time out. And when you look at his strikeout numbers here, Dan, first off, he's 97-13 strikeout to walk ratio. That's impressive in Major League Baseball. Plus, when you add on his minor league numbers, he's got 142 strikeouts for the season. When you go over his last 9 starts, I'll just read them off real quick. 8 strikeouts, 11 strikeouts, 8, 9, 8, 7, 8, 8, 9. That's his last 9 starts. I mean, this guy is racking them up. And going back to his last time out, like you talked about, 8 1/3 innings. I mean, he gets into the 8th inning again. I really love this strikeout. Even if it's 6 or 7, he's got a shot at it. So 7 in the hook. I've been riding this strikeout. You know, it's one of those things in sports betting, Dan, when you're making money betting kind of an angle here, which his strikeout prop to the over is necessarily an angle. I don't, you know, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So I'm back on it, man. For big game breakdown, I like his strikeout prop to the over, 7.5 plus 125. So risk 100 to win 125 for Paul Skeens to have 8 strikeouts or more tonight.
Yeah, I you know, we got some maybe a little dissension here in the chat before the breakdown even started. Richard Lockhart was saying, I like Astros money line. Skeens pitching outs over. Okay, so he does like the over and the ERA under. So while he likes Houston a little bit here, he is not dissenting from my man Drew Martin there. Over the 7.5 at plus money. Again, the guy goes deep. You never know once he gets some of those pitches rolling. You know, he can pitch out batters or he can strike out batters in bunches. Skeens going over the 7.5 is the look out of the gate here. Hop below in the comments. Let us know what you're looking to eye here tonight. We'll touch upon some other games. We touched upon that Pittsburgh-Houston. We got a best bet coming up in Yankees, Phils, Mariners, Red Sox. We'll be talking here next with BP, and then we'll be talking Mets against the Twins here this evening. So that's coming your way here on the show. You can hop below in the comments any other games that you'd like us to hit on here. But BP, I'll welcome you in, brother. And Mariners are rolling again, brother. I mean, we don't have to mention that they're rolling against the Chicago White Sox. We'll just gloss over that because nevertheless they come into Monday with a little wind in their sails, and they're back atop the AL West, which is really what they're aiming to do. How are you looking to bet this one, though? You ride the momentum heading in? Do you think maybe there's some overrated nature coming in here for the M's because it was the White Sox they were beating? When you see this Monday series setting up, how are you looking to bet it?
Yeah, let's talk about the Red Sox, Dan. Couple things with them. Number one, they're coming off the Sunday night game, obviously. They lose the Yankees 8-2. So that's typically a tough spot when a team has the quick turnaround after the Sunday night game. Now, no travel involved for Boston. We should note that they get to stay at Fenway for this next series against the Mariners. But secondly, the Red Sox, they don't score as many runs at home as they do on the road. In fact, they are one of just 6 teams in all of Major League Baseball averaging over a half run less per game at home than on the road. Interestingly enough, 4 of those 6 teams happen to reside in the AL East. Now, Seattle happens to be another of those 6 teams. But when you look at their home road splits, Dan, keep in mind the fact that they average substantially more on the road has a lot to do with how few they score at home. They only average 4.3 runs per game still on the road. That's 18th in all of baseball. I believe they're 29th in home scoring. And I kind of want to sell the Mariners lineup here a little bit. You mentioned what they did over the weekend and who it was against. 22 runs in 3 games sounds nice, but when the other team's the White Sox, that's a quadruple A team, let's be honest here. I am skeptical that Seattle can put a lot of runs on the board against an actual major league team here in Boston. But I do want to buy on both starting pitchers today, guys. Logan Gilbert, Nick Pivetta. Uncharacteristic poor starts from each of them their last time out. I'm just going to draw a line and toss that in the garbage. Gilbert, yeah, he gives up 5 runs to the Angels, but 4 of those were unearned. He is still the MLB leader in WHIP at .86, tied for the lead in quality starts with 17. So I think the Seattle starter is going to do just fine. As for Pivetta, starting for Boston today, yes, that start at Coors Field was a disaster, but Dan, it was Coors Field, okay? Crazy things can happen there. 3 starts prior to that, Pivetta had allowed just 4 runs total and had 28 strikeouts and 19 2/3. He's got a great stuff plus rating for the season. So I'm going to look to the under 8.5 here. I think both starters get the job done, and I do not trust either offense in this spot.
Under out of the gate here for my man BP. So we're looking at a pitching prop over, and we're looking at a total under. So we got a little bit of something for everyone here on a Monday edition of First Pitch. While you're hanging out with us, make sure you hit that like button. If you haven't already, subscribe. And if you definitely haven't, hit that little bell. You'll get notified when we go live here. And also hit that follow button if you're tuning in on TikTok, stumbling upon the video, or you're on X on Instagram. Hit that follow and you'll get us in the timeline. Gentlemen, Scott Chaffee was asking about this doubleheader. It's the only early game on the board, and that's the game 1 in the this O's doubleheader. And it looks like expected in game 1 we should be seeing the Zach Eflin debut here. He got traded from the Rays on Friday. Now he's in an O's uniform. He's taking on the Blue Jays here. High total in that game over that key number of 9. It's sitting at 9.5. Still let some shops out here. Drew, I'll ask you, any thoughts on game 1, game 2? What Scott said was Orioles' second game team total over. So he's already looking at game 2. He thinks the Blue Jays steal game 1. So any thoughts on either of those doubleheader games? And BP, we'll get your thoughts after we hear from Drew.
You know what, Dan, just to be quick with it, I didn't get involved with either of the two. I will say this, like
Fair.
Pitchers making their first start with the new team is always a little bit tricky for me. I kind of pumped the brakes on that. I will say that, the Blue Jays, I guess over the weekend playing a lot better baseball, but maybe in the first game, I mean, that is a big plus price to go against Eflin in his first start with the O's. I mean, as high as plus 165 right now. If you're needing something early, that's the way I would probably lean with the Jays. Big plus price, but other than that, I don't have much, man.
Yeah, and it looks like game 1 is the one that we're sitting at 9. Misspoke there as we got 9.5 after game 2 ticked up there a little bit. So first game is Rodriguez, Eflin. Second game, you're looking at Francis versus Povich. No, Bryan, not Maury Povich. I know you want this show to be over so you can go watch your Maury. But BP, anything for you in either of these games? What are you thinking?
I am not the father, and number two, I don't have a play on this game, but Mark Zinno, we talked about this on the morning wager. I know he liked the over in this first game, and he made a compelling case. This is an interesting spot for Eflin to make his debut in an Orioles uniform because he comes over from another AL East team. Obviously, the Blue Jays are very familiar with him, and he has not pitched well against Toronto in the past. I know Baltimore's lineup's been scuffling of late. Toronto's has been underwhelming, as we all know, all season. But he made quite the compelling case to take the over in this first game. And I kind of agree with them. Eflin's numbers this season against Toronto just aren't very good. And, I trust the offenses, I think, in this one to get over that key number of 9.
How are you looking to bet the doubleheader, if betting at all? Drew saying, easy for me to cross it all at the board. New starter there for the O's. Just passing, maybe learning and looking into Tuesday's slate. Robert S. over in the chat on YouTube. Appreciate you all tuning in and hopping below in the comments. Let us know any other games you want to touch upon. Best bets are around the corner in the Yankees and Phillies game and the Twins and Mets game. So those ones will be touched upon. Any other you want us to hit on, hop below in the comments wherever you're streaming us live from. Robert S. was in the chat over on YouTube. Guardians money line with action not listed. He thinks Flaherty is going to be getting scratched. Regardless, it's going to be Bybee and Flaherty in that one. If he doesn't get scratched, BP, do you have any feeling on Flaherty getting scratched in this one? Any thoughts on that game regardless?
Yeah, I kind of like the over, and I would bet to the point about action because if Flaherty gets pulled, this total's going up. This is another game we happen to talk about on the morning wager this morning. These teams know each other quite well. They have already met 8 times in the month of July. This is the final series, and both Bybee and Flaherty, they've faced their respective opponents now the third time in the last 3 weeks. So these lineups are familiar with the pitchers. Now, as we've noted multiple times, Flaherty could, he has been trade bait. He's been talked about. He may not get the start. He could be traded, but I just think that is great as Flaherty has been at times this season. He does have good numbers against the Guardians, and the Guardians necessarily aren't as prolific at the plate away from home as they are at Progressive Field. I just think this number is too low given how familiar the lineups are with these two starting pitchers. So I would bet this over 7 if I were to make a move on this one.
Let us know how you're looking to bet this one. Hop below in the comments, and we'll chop it up with you down there. As I mentioned, best bets right around the corner. Drew, one of the teams that we talked about with Bryan was, hey, why are we all that impressed with the M's weekend sweep? Because it was against the Chicago White Sox. Well, those lovely Chicago White Sox get to limp home, and they'll be facing off against the Kansas City Royals here tonight. Any reason why we don't just look at the fact that Chris Flexen is on the bump and we eat the chalk here with the Kansas City Royals? Maybe even think about laying it on the run line, because it's not like we've had any buy signs for this White Sox team. And then you get a pitcher like Flexen up on the bump. Was this a cross-off game for you, looking at the price on the Kansas City Royals, or do you think there might be a way that you can attack this one?
Yeah, I mean, the only way I'm looking at it is on the Royals. I mean, lay in the wood with them. I'm actually surprised it's not more. I mean, when you talk about the White Sox, and BB touched on it when he was talking about the Mariners game, if you're looking for positives with the White Sox, it's their first 3 starters, like the top of the starting rotation. It's Eric Fetty, the kid out of UNLV. They got Garrett Crochet and Drew Thorpe, who actually has good numbers. Well, they all 3 just went against the Mariners, and they lost all 3 of those games. So now the bottom half of the rotation, man, it's not pretty. And Chris Flexen, I mean, I guess he had decent numbers in the Korean baseball league, but here in Major League Baseball, he's having a rough time, man. So yeah, I would go with the Royals if you need something here. I'm not really in the business of laying 70 cents in this sport, but yeah, that's the only way I would go. And I left something out of the Blue Jays asking for something in the early game, Dan. The Blue Jays over the weekend, they won 3 straight against the Rangers. They are playing better baseball, but they scored 20 runs in those 3 games. They went up against Lorenzen, Andrew Haney, and John Gray, 3 better starters for the Rangers. So that would be another point towards maybe an over or the Blue Jays in that one if you're looking for the plus price in the early start.
Yeah, BP, how about for you? Anything? I mean, you mentioned part of your handicap was on, hey, let's not get overzealous about what teams do against the White Sox, but what teams do against the White Sox is beat them up. So, we were talking with Drew. We were talking with Drew before the show. The fact that we got the opening line report with Teddy Covers coming starting next week. That's right. NFL is back. Drew going to be on that show weekly with Teddy Covers. One of his famous lines is, "If I'm playing, I'm laying." And this one seems like that's the only way to look at it. So any thoughts in Royals and White Sox? If not, we're going to swing here to Rangers and the Cardinals, as Tyler has some questions in that. But you want to tie a bow on this one first?
Well, yeah, what you do against the White Sox matters. If you're playing against the White Sox, and the Royals have absolutely owned the team, 9-1 this year. Dan, the White Sox have lost 14 in a row. Their last win was on July 10th. It was part of a doubleheader. The last day that Chicago did not suffer a loss was July 5th. They won the series opener at Miami 3-2 that day, and there was no doubleheader. So, I mean, this team is 27-81. I mean, how are they going to care the rest of the way? I mean, that's the thing. Kansas City, I mean, obviously, it's a tight wild card race. Flexen's on the mound. He's awful. It's really hard. This isn't even, you look at Kansas City. I mean, there's certain starters in their rotation that I want to fade. Pardon me. Marsh actually isn't one of them. So, yeah, it would be Kansas City if you can tolerate that juice, or pass for me.
Yeah, hey, the chat loves their parlays. There's your parlay piece for you. What could go wrong? Fading Chris Flexen. What could go wrong in like a 3-leg parlay? What could go wrong? What other legs are you throwing in there if you're adding KC? Hop below in the comments. Let us know. BP, I'm going to throw it right back your way with a more interesting game. We can definitely say Tyler has brought up the Rangers and as he calls the Cardinals, the Redbirds. I don't know if he's going fishing later today or what. He says something stinks with Eovaldi minus 115 versus Palente. Are you getting that same fish stench? A little bit fishy on the line there, BP? What do you think about this matchup?
St. Louis is a team that has had a fishy smell to me all season. Dan, you look at their record and you look at their run differential, it just doesn't line up. This is a team that has won more games than you would expect based on the run differential column. I don't have anything on this game. It seemed like, Eovaldi, I kind of was looking at his strikeout prop. St. Louis is a team that can certainly swing and miss quite a bunch. The Rangers, what a disappointing weekend it was for them. Again, back to our earlier point, Dan, about what you do against the White Sox necessarily doesn't matter in the last series. Everyone's like, Texas, they beat up on the White Sox. Now they've got it going. They're ready to turn the corner. They head north of the border, and it just sort of falls apart. I don't really want to back their offense, but I think maybe looking at Eovaldi, his strikeout prop, that might be the way to do it here.
Man, I thought the fish stench was just this stupid picture behind me right here.
I've been wondering what that is, by the way, the whole show. I've been kind of looking every time you talk what that is.
Yeah, you're like, I'm not listening to a word. It's like a painting of like Ocean City, New Jersey. So that's where I'm at right now. That's where the in-laws are at. So this is my makeshift office for the week, guys. So you got Ocean City behind me, and yes, that is the fish stench. Is the smelly waters of the New Jersey shore, of which there is definitely a stench that emanates. Drew, any thoughts for you? As BP said, he doesn't really love anything in that one. Rangers and Cardinals, you can tie a bow on it. Also, Drew, before we swing to the next game, tell folks about the big play that you're excited about over at your page, wt.buzz/DM, a big ticket item up for the folks right out of the gate here on a Monday, a spot that you're really liking. So tie a bow on Rangers Cardinals. Let us know what we can grab over at your page tonight.
Yeah, 5% max limit up and available. Number one over the last week, guys, been nailing some big dogs. Got another dog on tonight's page. So if you're liking plus price winners, go check that out. Drew Martin, wagertalk.com. And for the Redbirds, I actually think the home dog is barking here, Dan. I really do. Got on them plus 102, risk 100 to win 102, listing Andre Palante, the 25-year-old out of Cal Irvine. tell you this, he's kind of riding under the radar. Like, if you're thinking it's smelling a little fishy here, I think it's fishy for a reason. It's not only because of that picture in Ocean City, New Jersey. Palante, 3 of his last 4 starts, 5 of his last 7, he's given up 1 earned run or less. So he's riding a hot right hand. And Eovaldi, 3.3 ERA. But when you look at his game logs, it's kind of up and down a little bit. And the Cardinals have been surprising. They're a top 10 lineup against righties. They kind of have this lefty-righty dichotomy where they see it a lot better out of righties' hands. And top 10 lineup against righties. In the Rangers coming off of that getting swept north of the border, they've been a streaky team. You know, they won 5 straight before. Now they've lost 3 straight. Maybe look to go against them. They're 4 games under 500. St. Louis, kind of surprising here, 3 games over 500. Palante, a guy throwing 96, miles per hour. I think he can have a good start here. He's been hot. So I think the dog is barking in St. Louis.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see what you're seeing in that one. Glad to know that it's just not me that stinks here, guys. That's you're making me feel better, a little less self-conscious here, heading on into best bets. Before we get into best bets, folks, head on over to wagertalk.com. WT.buzz/deals can get you huge savings. So we're always putting up different deals throughout the series, throughout the season. We still have, you can grab football from some of your favorite experts, get some MLB through the rest of the season. That one's going away soon, though, so you definitely want to check it out. WT.buzz/deals. Also, shout out to our man Ski Profit in the chat saying Drew Money Martin.
Oh.
I think Tyler's right. He says Ski doesn't know what to do with himself with no hardwood going on. That we have Ski here joining in the chat. But for what it's worth, when basketball does come back, WNBA, NBA, WT.buzz/HP. Find our man Ski over there. Before we get to best bets, Drew, going to throw this one back your way because it's come up quite a few times here in the chat, and that's Cubs and Reds. Similar logos and kind of similar records as well here for the Cubs and Reds. It's Talion and Spires. Nothing really jumped off the page at me in this one, simply because you have, I think, really the line indicates that you got a really even matchup here. So I didn't really find much that screamed off the page as buy on either of these teams. Total that I didn't really love, floating around that 9. Anything for you, Cubs, Reds, for the chat?
Yeah, I do, Dan. And shout out to Ski Profit, guys. If you like betting the WNBA, maybe none better than my man Ski Profit. Check him out. But yeah, I'm actually involved in this one as well, Dan, in the Queen City. I like the Chicago Cubs. Another dog here, just a small pup, if you will, -102. Jamison Taillon, I'm listing him here. The Cubs have won 2 straight, actually against the Royals, which we talked about, and they scored 16 runs their last 2 games. So seeing the ball well. Jamison Taillon, the 32-year-old out of Woodlands, Texas, sub-3 ERA on the season, 7+ innings in his last time out, just 1 earned, 4 hits against the Brewers lineup. I think he's going to have a good start here against the Reds lineup that overall, something I like about this time of year, why I've had success in years past and this season, right after the All-Star break, Dan, I like looking at how these lineups are hitting. And sure enough, the Cincinnati Reds, one of the coldest lineups in all of baseball. So I'm looking to go against them here. And they got Carson Spears, their starter. It's his first start since July 12th. He went on the 15-day IL with shoulder issues. Whenever it's shoulder, elbow issues with starting pitchers, I'm always like, man, I don't know about – I look to go against these guys on their first start back. Well, we get that situation here with the Cincinnati starter. Plus the fact Cincinnati – interesting schedule spot out of the All-Star break. They played 3 straight road series. So this is their first home game in like 3 weeks. That's a fade spot for me as well. They're 5 games under 500. Look, this is kind of bottom of the barrel in the NL Central, the 4th and 5th place teams. But listing Jamison Taillon, the Chicago Cubs lineup is hitting the ball well and a slight bullpen edge. I think this is wrong teams favored. I like the Cubbies here, Dan.
WTF special. Wrong team favor going with the Chicago Cubbies as they visit the Great American Ballpark. BP, tie this one up for us. And also, we talked about Drew's big ticket that he has going, WT.buzz/DM. We basically talked about every game, or will talk about every game, but 2 on the MLB slate. But what is over at your page, WT.buzz/BP? And you in agreement with Drew on this one with Adam triggers Cubbies as he's still waiting for that over that he cashed or that over that he placed to cash.
Couple things. If you head on over to WT.buzz/BP, coming off a winning weekend, even though we had the big play loss, it was my first 5% loss of the season. Somehow, Blake Snell did not get a win, Dan, even though he didn't allow a run in 6 innings and had 15 strikeouts. That was very frustrating, but we cashed the Arizona Diamondbacks in the first. Yeah, we cashed Arizona the first 5 later that day. That got home. And then I was a long drive home from vacation. I was completely unaware that the LA Angels were down 6-0 at one point. And that's good because they came back and won 8-6. And when I looked at the score after a long drive, I was happy and then said, oh my God, thankfully I didn't look at the score earlier. I would have been very upset. So it was a 2-1 weekend for yours truly. Head on over to my page for my top play. Cincinnati Reds, speaking of driving, Dan, it's only a 3.5-hour drive for me to Cincinnati. And it is a drive that I have thought of making many times because I want to strangle this team. They are the most frustrating team in Major League Baseball, the Reds. Ellie De La Cruz had 4 steals yesterday, and the team scored 1 run. That can't happen. How does one guy have 4 steals and you still only score once? And, of course, they were up 1-0 the whole game. They won. The Reds are the opposite of the Cardinals. Great run differential. The record doesn't match up to it at all. I'm throwing in the towel on the Reds. Anyone who listens to the Morning Wager is probably rejoicing because I don't think this team's going to turn it around. There's always next year, so I'm done. I'm getting divorced with Cincinnati, and that's all I got to say about that.
Well, BP, you could have given me a heads up in the chat. Like, Drew, if I knew we were going to trigger Bryan that much, I wouldn't have thrown Cincinnati Reds his way. Like, his face is visibly red.
Talk about it.
The anger is real. The anger is real for you, BP. So a little advocation of murder here on a Monday. That's a great way to start off the week, Bryan. But we won't hold you to it. It was all. It was what can you say? It's like sarcasm, or it's the other S word where it's what is it? I'm gonna pass over it. It's like the shit. Yeah, it's shit. Yeah, this is what happens when you're here in Ocean City, New Jersey. Your brain goes to shit, gentlemen. All right, let's talk before I say anything else stupid here. Yankees Phils. Man, the chat, Drew, you got a best bet in this one. I feel like everyone in the chat is telling me this is the fade the Phillies spot here. So it's Wheeler on the mound, though. You know what I mean? Like, I love playing a little Wheeler to record the win, but Phillies do come in after a very inconsistent series over the weekend. You know, the bats explode in game 2, bookended with 2 kind of just meh performances, lose by 1 run yesterday, but it's been 4 straight series losses, and now they have to play the Yankees. How do you see game 1 here shaking out, Drew? Because the homer in me wants to say, oh, bounce back spot, but the head is kind of telling me this plus money price is pretty nice here on the Yankees. What say you?
Yeah, great matchup over. I mean, possible World Series preview here with the Yankees and the Phillies. Phillies still the number 1 record in baseball, and they're 38-18 at home. So always tough to go against them, particularly with Wheeler on the hill. The thing about it is the Yankees 62-45, just 1 game back of the Orioles, and the Yankees have been money on the road, 35-22 road record for the season. Really, I'm going after this one, Dan, because he's not as big of a name in the starting pitcher role, but Luis Gil. He's been great for the Yankees. I mean, 3.1 ERA on the season, 3 straight starts, 1 earned run in each, 24-2 strikeout to walk ratio. And the lineups face the Red Sox, Orioles, and Mets. Those are 3 top 10 lineups. So he's pitching very, very well right now. The Yankees winning 2 straight. They've scored 26 runs in the 3-game series over the weekend. So they're seeing the ball well. I think this is a great spot for the Yankees. Now, for the Phillies, Zach Wheeler, always tough to go against them. 2.5 ERA, 3.2 FIP, 133 strikeouts on the season. But you brought it up, Dan. Losers of 4 straight series. I didn't realize that, but they have lost 3 of their last 4. They're just 3-7 their last 10, so not playing their best baseball. And if you go back a few years, of course, they're in different leagues. But Wheeler's given up 9 runs in 9 innings, his last 9 innings against the Yankees lineup. So it's not something that's just what the bet is off of, but did want to throw that out there. Look, I'm listing Luis Gil as the starter, and I'm back in the Bronx Bombers here, plus 125. Wow. It comes down to price point in sports betting, Dan, and I think it's too big of a price on the Phillies. So it's the Yankees plus 125 for me.
There, you get what you want, chat. You were looking for someone to fade the Phillies here live on the show. You get it in Drew Martin's best bets. Head on over to his page, wt.buzz/DM. Get the true best bet, the 5%er rocking tonight over at his page at WagerTalk. BP, you got a best bet for the folks here as well. It's Twins and Mets, and it was satire. Satire was the word I was looking for. Thank you, RU Zen. BP, he didn't help me out there. I was trying to help you out, so you didn't get FBI knocking at your door. You just leave me out there. RU Zen has to have my back. Satire, the word that I was looking for. It's not satire, though, that we're looking towards this Twins team total. All I know is I look at this game, Mets and Twins. I look at Woods, Richardson, and Quintana, and that just feels like a starting pitching mismatch of the ages. What are you thinking in this one, BP? Twins, Mets, best bet for the folks.
Well, first off, Dad, I never said I was going to finish strangling the Reds. Just rough them up a little bit. That's all. Get them in gear. But no, don't need to strangle the Twins lineup here because they have been doing very, very well. But let's talk about the Mets first, okay? Despite losing Saturday and Sunday, they still have baseball's best record since June 9th, 28-14. Winning 2/3 of their games, very good. But right behind them, Dan, are those Twins, 25-15 in that same stretch. And nobody has scored more runs in all of baseball since June 9th than have the Minnesota Twins. 234 runs their last 40 games. That is an average of 5.85 runs per game. Pretty good there. So this team total of 3.5 that I'm seeing at DraftKings, that looks low to me. I get that Quintana, the starter for the Mets, he's generally not given up a lot of runs this season, but 5.21 expected ERA. You know I love expected ERA, Dan. Definite signs of regression, I think, coming there. And I think we're going to see those signs of regression start seeping in here because the Twins against lefties, my goodness. Number 1 batting average this season, number 4 in WRC+. And check this out. Since that date of June 9th I mentioned earlier, the Twins are hitting .315 against lefties. That is by far the best in all of MLB. Number 2 is the Giants at .279. And during that time, the Twins have a 149 WRC+ against lefties. Obviously, number 1 as well. So I like the road team's chances here against the Southpaw Quintana. They're probably going to get a run or two off the Mets bullpen as well. The Mets bullpen has its fair share of adventures. Remember, Royce Lewis is back in the lineup for Minnesota, guys. So team total over 3.5 for Minnesota is my best bet. No crimes committed here.
No crimes committed, that's for sure. But not going full in with the Twins. Does like the team total over, but the chat loving the Twins. Eric D, I love the Twins tonight. Tyler saying fire it up. His 5% play, Twins money line, because he has SWR, aka ATM, aka the GOAT on the mound, is what our man Tyler is saying. Always getting great prices with SWR on the bump. So they love the money line, but BP looking at that team total going over versus the Mets. That's the best bet for him. The Yankees in the fade spot against my Phils, the best bet for Drew Martin. He's got a 5%er rocking tonight, wt.buzz/DM. Check out Bryan Powers' page. He's got plays locked and loaded as well, wt.buzz/BP. That's going to do it for a Monday edition. Hop below in the comments. Let us know what your best bet is tonight, and we'll be chopping it up with you down there before the games go off here tonight. For Drew Martin, for BP, big thanks for tuning in. While you're hanging out with us, hit that like button, hit subscribe, and if you're watching us on TikTok or X or on Instagram, make sure you hit that follow button as well. Get us locked and loaded in your timeline. We'll be locked and loaded with another edition coming your way on Tuesday for first pitch, but don't go anywhere. Just about 30 minutes from now, that's right, Lawrence Presman is hosting Wager Talk today alone. There is no Teddy to slow down what is to be, I'm sure, an off-the-rails week with our man Lawrence Presman. So tune in, Wager Talk today. Going to get you some winners and probably some insane conversation with our fearless leader there, Prez. So don't go anywhere. Stay locked and loaded for that winning sports information and a little entertainment along the way. That's what you get here on Wager Talk TV. We'll see you next time on First Pitch.